Well, good morning, YouTubers. This is the first teaching that I've done since I got back from vacation, and that's why you haven't had one for a while. I want to talk to you today about Matthew chapter 6. Now, before I say anything else, I want to note that here in Arizona it's monsoon season, so I may have to cut this off and head for the house. However, love the out of doors and love the way things look. Also, I'm wearing reading glasses, not my regular glasses, so if for some strange reason you notice that, why, I apologize. So here we have Matthew chapter 6, and we're going to be studying Jesus' opening words about prayer today. So here we go. Jesus said, "When you pray, you are not to be like the hypocrites, for they love to stand and pray in the synagogues and on the street corners, so that they may be seen by men. Truly, I say to you, they have their reward in full. But when you pray, go into your inner room, close your door, and pray to your Father who is in secret, and your Father who sees what is done in secret will reward you." Now, this is the first principle of prayer. And it is, of course, apparent that Jesus has to correct some pretty odd impressions amongst the people. All that they saw was people showing off. People showing that they were great prayers. They probably wrote their prayers out, or at least memorized them and then prayed them so that they were eloquent and beautiful. And Jesus calls these people hypocrites. Now, in the original, the word hypocrite was used for a mask. These are people who put on a mask. They want you to see what they want you to see, but they don't want you to see the real person inside. So this is very important because Jesus first has to correct false impressions. That's the first thing he does. And when a hypocrite prays, he asks the question, how do other people see me? When you pray from the heart, you ask the question, how does God see me? So the first negative, the first statement of correction is, don't show off. Now, loud public prayers may be okay, or they may be mostly for show. Only you can decide that, and God is the one who determines it. If they are for show, they're not to God, but they're just for the public. They're for people to watch. They're a performance, not a prayer. What Jesus wants you to do is to go and meet with God personally. Now, God can see wherever you are. It doesn't bother him that you're in your closet, like Jesus says. It doesn't bother him that you're hidden away someplace where no one else can see you. It doesn't bother him if the prayers are silent. In fact, some of Jesus' most powerful prayers were silent. For example, in John chapter 11, verses 40 through 42. Whoops, went too far here. He says this. Jesus is in the process of raising Lazarus from the dead. And so in verse 40, Jesus says to her, that is Martha, "Did I not say to you that if you believe, you will see the glory of God?" So they removed the stone, that is the stone covering Lazarus' tomb. Then Jesus raised his eyes and said, "Father, listen carefully. I thank you that you have heard me." That means a silent prayer preceded what was here. And Jesus gives thanks for the miracle in advance because he knows what's going to happen. And then he says, "I knew that you always hear me, but because of the people standing around I said it, so that they may believe that you sent me. So he wants people to know that this is God working, and this is one of his great miracles. And that, by the way, is perfectly permissible, even though in Matthew 6 he says, do this silently and quietly. Jesus wants them to see that God is at work here. So now in the passage that he talks about positive things about prayer, he says, go meet with God alone. That's really important, because Jesus often prayed alone. Mark chapter 1 verse 35, his disciples come to him after he's gone out into a solitary place and prayed, and they say, all men seek for you. So Jesus often did what he said for others to do. That's how he prayed. The second admonition about things we are not to do is don't babble. Here is an interesting passage in Matthew chapter 6. He says, when you're praying, do not use meaningless repetition as the Gentiles do, for they suppose that they will be heard for their many words, or because of their many words. So don't be like them, for your Father knows what you need before you ask him. And then follows the Lord's Prayer, which we'll consider next time. But listen carefully. God hears your heart. You don't need to say the right words. You don't need to say many words. You just need to expose your heart to him and be honest. Prayer is a relationship with your Father, not a bunch of babbling to some distant and perhaps non-existent deity. See, here's the thing. God is real. And when you talk to him, you're talking to a real person. So it's not as if he's going to hear you just because you talk a lot. The reality here is that he hears you the first time. And if he doesn't answer you the first time, and you do pray again, it's mostly because of you and not because of him. Or because he wants to test your sincerity and see what you really want. Because elsewhere Jesus said, whatever things you desire in prayer, you're going to receive if you have faith. So this ends our study on Matthew chapter 6, just prior to the Lord's Prayer, Matthew chapter 6, verses 5 through 7. And I hope God gives you a wonderful day today and fills your life with blessing and joy. And this is Steve Bradley signing off for the God Loves People YouTube channel.